Hello, my friends, and welcome back. We are into week 2 of the WoW Classic reunion tour, as it were, and it's getting to the point where all of my tunes are about 20. They're 18 to 22 now, and we're going to be doing Deadmines over and over and over again. Each one is probably going to do Deadmines once or twice, at least once, but maybe 2 or 3 times. We'll see, depending on what's going on. I've joined into a couple guilds already, so some of those are going to necessitate return trips to Deadmines, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to kind of just chit-chat a little bit about Deadmines. It's one of the first dungeons you run into, and it's the one that I remember most fondly from Original Classic. I remember it in a fond manner because it was one of those ones that began to kind of showcase which people were there to learn how to run dungeons and how mechanics worked and how teamwork worked together, and which people just thought that they were going to be able to jump in through and, there's 5 of us, so we can just steamroll everything. And you're really noticing it now with some of the difference between WoW and WoW Classic players. The people who are coming from WoW who never played WoW Classic, they're running in there under the assumption that they're just going to be able to gather up all the mobs and destroy them all, but that's not how it works. It's not working that well. So I thought I'd take a moment to kind of go over some of the concepts and ideas that I noticed when we're going in there. One of the things you want to notice, usually for Deadmines, when people first get to it, there's 5 quests that they need to take. 2 of them, Oh Brother and Collecting Memories, don't actually happen inside the instance of the Deadmines. It's inside the Deadmines, but not inside the instance where Van Cleef is, right? So you need to kind of go over to the darker area on the map, and it's going to have some undead zombies and skeletons in there, and that's where you can get the union cards from the undead mobs, and you can get the trinket, the badge, the Thistlebread's badge from the foreman. So that's where you need to go for that. Right now, the first couple weeks, it is overpopulated with players, so it's a little difficult to get in there and get those things. So I would suggest that you not worry about those 2 quests. Maybe go get the badge, because you can, if you kill the foreman, all members of your party can get it. But for the union cards, I would definitely put that one on the back burner, especially if there's another party of people there. If you happen to be there by yourself solo and you can handle those types of mobs solo, then maybe go on through there and grab them, because the drop rate's a little low. So if one person can go through, might be able to get all 4 union cards. But those are those 2 quests. Then you have the instance proper itself, and when you go in there, there's a couple things that you need to be mindful of. All of the mobs have flee mechanics, so as they get down to like their last 10th percentage of health, they're going to kind of turn around and flee and go to one of their other buddies and typically aggro other mobs. So my first hero that went through there was a warrior, so I tended to stance back into battle stance from defensive stance, doing a little bit back and forth. I have a little rage conservation thanks to my talent specking, but it might be difficult because it's going to be a little difficult to build rage in there. But you might want to consider trying to hamstring a little bit and maybe not worry so much about the AoE Earth Shatter or the the demoralizing shout. You want to give your teammates the battle shout at the every 2 minutes one, the name of which escapes me, but you might want to consider hamstringing those guys so they can get away, or so they don't get away, so that they don't aggro other mobs. Because a lot of times people are going to go in there and think that 16, 15, you can go in as young as 10. You could go in level 10 and up, but I would recommend you wait till 18 before really doing it, and then you'll probably get a level while you're in there. So be prepared to know what talent you're going to spec when you go in, right? If you're in there with a warlock, you're going to be quite fortunate if they happen to train their all of their curses. Now, only one warlock curse can be placed on somebody at a time. Now, I would say my mains are warlocks. I played warlocks quite often back in the day. I had one on every faction, every server I played on, just because I enjoyed having the demon pets and things like that, and be able to summon your own mount. It was more convenient to me. It's a little bit cheaper, yes, but I like the RP of the warlock, right? So I would run my corruption affliction warlock up and go from there. I wasn't a big demonology guy, but I digress. We're talking about the curses. If you have a warlock and they have Curse of Recklessness, what you might want to do is use Curse of Recklessness, especially on the simple mobs. All right, so in fact, let me go ahead and put this through that, because a lot of warlocks are going to want to put Curse of Agony on there because they want to do damage, right? While you're pulling trash mobs, the basic miners, they're going to go down too fast for any of Curse of Agony to really start ticking and putting some real damage on there. In fact, it'll probably happen too fast for your Corruption. So what I would do is put your Recklessness on there and start wanding away, And for the elite trash mobs, you might want to do a Curse of Agony. In fact, you might want to do a half sequence. You might do Curse of Agony, Corruption, Shadow Bolt, and corruption will be dropping off, so put that back on. And then think about just when they get to about 10%, go ahead and putting Curse of Recklessness on there so they don't run away either, right? Because you want to control the mobs there, especially if you get down into the Goblin Foundry, where those Goblin Engineers are there. They spawn those little Mechano Harvesters that help make the fight too, and they're really kind of packed in there close around the Foundry Smeltery area, so you want to make sure that you don't let them run. So if you have Curse of Recklessness, don't be afraid to use it. That's the place to use it on. And it's a good place to start practicing juggling your curses. For example, on the first boss in the Deadmines, you have a Abomination and 2 ads. For you tanks out there, and whomever's leading the group, if you pull that boss ad when he's farthest from the door, closest to you, the 2 ads on the side probably won't aggro. If they do, be ready with a sheep if you have somebody who can polymorph, or I guess, yeah, that's the one off the top of my head you're most likely to run into, right? Or Fear on the other one, have him running around a little bit inside that room. There's nobody to really aggro inside that room, so Fear might be a good way to go. But if you pull him out, it might be a good idea, again, talking about the Warlock, if both of the, you know what, I'll put the, if all of those ads come at once and you're not able to control them, you might want to put Curse of Weakness on the main boss while everybody's working on those 2 ads, and then come back and put Agony on the boss. And that way, the tank who's trying to keep aggro on those 3 is not going to be overwhelmed by a whole bunch of damage at once, right? All right, so you got those guys. Go through your rotation. Good to go. And you go into the next boss. You could kill the trash mobs and go to the next boss, right? The next boss is the Sneed inside his little Mechano guy, his Mecha. Now that's 2 bosses. A lot of people don't know that. It's kind of 2 in 1. You have to first clear out the room, get all the goblins out of there, do gun pulls if you can. Try to take 1 or 2 at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself, especially if you're in there with 16, 17, or even lower players, right? Or level characters. So get the room cleared out, then take on the Mechano Harvester. Once the Mechano Harvester is down, Sneed will pop out, so make sure you tell your members of your party not to loot Sneed, that they have to finish the fight before they loot, and then, you know, take care of the looting there. The third fight, let me try to remember. I'm trying to get the sequence here. I think the third fight is actually once you get down onto the ship area, right? So the third fight would be Smite, the Tauren. So here you get in there and you clear the dock of some pirates, and you get up to the gangplank that leads to the ship. Well, there's 2 invisible guys that are ads for that boss, right? So here's a situation where you want to make sure that you kill the ads first, absolutely, because if you try to focus on the boss at 50% and 20% health, I think those are the 2 points, he automatically stuns the group, right? So the whole group gets stunned. So you want to make sure that you're not stunned while the 2 ads are still alive, because they'll just keep wrecking you. He takes a few moments to go get something out of his chest so he can improvise. I'm sure he's not a prop comic. He's going to get new weapons or something to come and beat you up, right? So he does that. You want to make sure that you get those ads taken care of, and then you can just beat him up. All right, you go up onto the ship, right? And there's mobs to the right, mobs to the left. I'll say clockwise and counterclockwise. I would suggest taking care of a few of the mobs on the counterclockwise direction, but don't go too far towards the ramp, because as you go underneath the ramp that continues going up the ship, the mobs that are above you will aggro down and come fight you, so you might become overwhelmed. What I would suggest doing is going clockwise around the ship and slowly taking care of those guys as well. And along the way, you'll run into Cookie, the Murloc chef of the of the instance, and he also drops something. Sometimes he's got a nice wand. He's got a nice mace. I believe his rolling pin is a mace, but the thing is, it looks like a rolling pin. So it actually has an interesting model object art. So that's something to think about. Continue around, like I said, continue going clockwise, and then you'll get to that ramp section that continues up the ship even more. And there you can kind of control your pulls a little better, right? Keep working your way up, being careful, being mindful of try to single pull with a gun if you can. Keep bringing them to you. You remember, you want to pull the mobs to you. You don't want to push yourself into mobs, because you want to handle 1 or 2 at a time rather than having 10 of them handle you at a time, right? Keep working yourself up that ramp, but be mindful of a patrol that goes around the top of the ship, right? And speaking of patrols, all right, let me put a pin in the top patrol. Let's talk about the other patrols. As you beat the first 3 bosses, right? So the Abomination-looking guy, the Mecha Goblin, And actually, the Abomination, the Mecha Goblin, and the Goblin in the Foundry. I glossed over him. When you get to the Foundry, take care of all the goblins that you can before you take on the boss Goblin in the Foundry. It's a pretty straightforward fight. All right. As you defeat each of those 3 bosses, there's a timer that starts a patrol from the rear guard. So as you beat the boss, advance very cautiously while being mindful of what's coming behind you, because you're about to get a patrol from behind of 2 to 3 elites that are going to engage you. So you got to be mindful of that. All right. So those are some additional patrols that show up. Now I'm talking again about the patrol that's on the top deck of the ship. It's the second to last boss fight, if you will. All right. So there's 3 of them. There's another green goblin. I think he's called Greenskin. What a game. All right. So you just need to control one of the guys and focus down whichever ones you want to do in order. It's a pretty straightforward fight, basically like having 2 elites and a mini boss. He's not a big boss, but he does drop some nice items, including, I believe, he can drop a pretty nice staff, an Emberstorm staff, so that's pretty nice. And then you get to the final boss, and the final boss is Van Cleef himself. Van Cleef starts with 2 adds. If you have a mage, you can polymorph one of them, focus down the other, and then start fighting Van Cleef. Or destroy both of the adds. Like polymorph one, destroy the other, then do Van Cleef. And then about halfway through the fight, another 2 adds will show up to help him out, and you can do the same thing. If you're concerned that you're not going to be able to control them, and the second time they show up, so 4 adds total, take the first 2 adds out, start dealing with Van Cleef, and then burn Van Cleef down as fast as you can so that you can get him out of the way and get credit for the quest, well, for accomplishing the kill and not have to worry about him again, and then take care of the 2 adds. That way, if you happen to die during that final part of the fight, you won't have to fight Van Cleef again. You can just come back and finish off those 2 guys. When you beat Van Cleef, make sure you pick up the head for your quest. Make sure you pick up the envelope, it's a letter, and starts another quest, so you can head to the Baron and Stormwind. All right, so that's a quick rundown. I told you a little bit about warriors and warlocks. Let me tell you about priests. If you're a priest, you're probably going to be best suited during most of this instance by using your wand almost exclusively the whole time on whatever's being targeted, and maybe throw a renew on the tank from time to time, or anybody else who might be needing help. That should be about all you need to do. DPS people, be sure you're assisting off the tank for whomever he's targeting. To do that, you target your tank and you hit F and it assists your tank, right? Mages, I kind of talked about what you want to do if you're polymorphing. Be mindful of whomever your leader, your tank wants you to polymorph, and do that. And if you ever want to run Deadmines with me, it's a required viewing anime. Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash. Grimgar of Fantasy and Ash is required viewing if you want to run an instance with me. Check that out. Or alternatively, you could watch Log Horizon, the training episode where the young crew of players were going to learn how to fight together. They spent the whole episode just sitting down, talking about what each other could do and how to best incorporate each other's skills, and that's the key to surviving any dungeon now and raid in the future. My friends, I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you did, please be sure to subscribe for more content like this coming real soon. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again real soon.